O tihei Māori ora, he mihi ana nā mana whenua ki tēnei takiwā, kāti māmoe a waitaha, kai tahu whānui katoa, tēnā koutou katoa. E nā mana e nā reo a Rangatira mā, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Nau mai, haere mai ki tēnei hui. Ko Grant Robertson taku ingoa, kona tumu whakarai ki o tākou whakaihu waka. Welcome everybody to this inaugural professorial lecture. My name is Grant Robertson. I'm the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Otago, and it's my great pleasure to open proceedings tonight for the inaugural professorial lecture for Professor Lincoln Wood. I want to acknowledge the official party, as we call them, up the front here, which is Professor Marie Tyne, who you will hear from very shortly, who is the Pro-Vice-Chancellor for the Division of Commerce, Professor Sarah Walton, the Head of Department for the Department of Management, and Professor Diane Sika-Poltonu, our Deputy Vice-Chancellor Pacific. Thank you all for coming along and joining us tonight. I want to acknowledge all of you. You've done that thing that we used to do to substitute teachers where everyone sat on one side of the room. You know, it's that trick that everyone used to do. So it's nice to see you, but it's especially nice to see those who've chosen to sit on this side of the room. Inaugural professorial lectures are incredibly special occasions. They mark a milestone in not only the academic career, in this case of Lincoln, but actually of a whole group of people who have been around somebody who has been striving for the pinnacle of what we have in academia, which is promotion to the rank of professor. Lincoln, I want to say thank you to you for what you have done for the University of Otago. I'm always interested in someone whose field is around decision making. I seem to have to do quite a lot of that, so I'm looking forward to learning a little bit more from you tonight on top of what I've already learned. But I want to thank you for your commitment to the university, to your field of study, to your department and to your division. What all of us know is that anyone in life who devotes themselves in the way that Lincoln has to his discipline can only do that with the support of friends and whānau. And so tonight I especially want to welcome Penny, Abigail, Eleanor and Finlay, who are the wife and children of Lincoln, but also the wider family, Carol and Murray Fletcher, who are here, who are Lincoln's in-laws, Pam and Bruce Wood, Lincoln's parents, and Jared Wood, Lincoln's brother. Online, we've also got Sinead and Ash and Emma and Clinton, and I welcome everyone online who's watching us. Sacrifices are made by families in times like this, and so I want to acknowledge those sacrifices and the contribution that Lincoln's family has made, and I'd ask tonight, this evening, that you all acknowledge Lincoln's family for their support for Lincoln. Without further ado, I'm now going to pass on to Professor Marie Tyne, who's going to give a bit of background around Lincoln's career and work, and then after that we'll hear from the man himself. But nō reira, you are most welcome again. Tēnā koutou, kia ora koutou katoa. Oh, and I forgot to say something. I have whiplash. There you go. And that means that I'm not going to sit down at the front, because if you sit at the front, you have to crane your neck to look at the top. So I'm going to be a man of the people and sit on that side of Marie.
Create that balance. Kia ora. Vice-Chancellor, tēnā koe. Professor Walton, tēnā koe. Professor Sika-Poltonu, tēnā koe. And the man of the hour, as our Vice-Chancellor has just put it, Professor Wood, tēnā koe. Family, friends, colleagues and members of Lincoln's whānau, tēnā koutou. Friends and colleagues, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora everyone, and a very, very warm welcome to you all. Ko Marie Tyne toka wingawa. I am the Pro-Vice-Chancellor and Dean of Te Kura Pākahi, the Otago Business School, and it is my absolute pleasure to be able to warmly welcome you here this evening for the inaugural professorial lecture of Lincoln Wood. Lincoln was promoted to professor this year, and tonight we come together to celebrate a career distinguished by research excellence, innovative and values-driven teaching, deep commitment to postgraduate supervision and mentorship, and significant service to the university and the broader academic and professional communities. Lincoln's academic journey spans sectors, countries, and disciplines, from his early work in logistics and construction to his more recent and highly impactful contributions within healthcare operations and supply chain management. Lincoln applies rigorous methodological expertise in new contexts and applies his research to real-world contexts, ultimately impacting people's lives. Lincoln's research record is exceptional, with over 80 journal articles and publications, 35 of which are A or A-star, 4 books, extensive international collaborations, and a growing body of health-related research supported by multiple Health Research Council activation grants. Lincoln's work blends advanced statistical modelling, multi-criteria decision-making, and systems thinking to address complex, real-world challenges, ranging from patient flow in emergency departments and hospital-acquired infections to sustainable supply chains, logistics innovation, and the environmental performance of global operations. Lincoln's research is widely cited, highly regarded, and importantly, practical, influencing industry practice, informing policy, and supporting communities, including projects that have shaped healthcare provision in rural Aotearoa. His methodological leadership is evident in his widely used published book on event study research and in his ability to translate complex analytical approaches into meaningful insights for both researchers and practitioners. Lincoln is equally an outstanding educator. He is a dedicated, innovative teacher whose evidence-based approach has transformed learning across multiple levels. He has been central to the development of Business 111, which is a core paper for the Otago Business School, embedding Te Ao Māori viewpoints and worldviews from the outset and leading sustained indigenisation across the curriculum. He has reshaped his paper MANT 334 on logistics and supply chain management through simulations, flipped classroom models, real-world cases, and system thinking frameworks, achieving exceptional student evaluations. His leadership extends to online learning, curriculum development, and major international partnerships which he leads and drives, including building and running the highly sought-after Doing Business in New Zealand program with NYU Stern. Lincoln is an extraordinary supervisor with 11 doctoral completions, 2 DBA completions, and currently 15 PhD students under his supervision. 15. His students consistently publish, win scholarships, and move into prominent academic and industry roles, a testament to his care, his expertise, and commitment to nurturing scholarly capability. Through service, Lincoln has shaped programs, processes, and systems at department, divisional, and university levels. As Associate Dean Postgraduate, he led major reforms to taught master's programs and contributed to successful accreditation efforts. He has served as Ethics Coordinator, Co-Director of the BCom Management Major, a member of the Library Services Committee, and a Fellow of University College. His leadership has streamlined processes, supported postgraduate communities, and strengthened our assurance of learning in the business school. Beyond the university, he is a chartered member of the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, Vice President of the Eastern Asia Society for Transportation Studies, an active reviewer and editorial board member leading journals, and an invited speaker nationally and internationally. Lincoln is what we coin an all-round outstanding citizen, Certainly not someone who says no to any request or plea, and he certainly gets very, very many of these, because Lincoln is a doer and a completer, and quite honestly, an excellent and engaging academic to work with. Lincoln consistently leads with integrity, compassion, and unwavering commitment to his students, colleagues, and research collaborators, exemplifying the very, very best of academic leadership. His work enhances communities, strengthens educational practice, and contributes solutions to some of the most pressing challenges facing Aotearoa and the world. Lincoln, it is truly a privilege to work alongside you. On behalf of Te Kura Pākehī, thank you for your exceptional contributions to the Otago Business School, to the university, and to your fields of scholarship. We are immensely proud of your achievements and absolutely thrilled to be able to be here with you to celebrate this evening. Please join me to warmly welcome up Professor Lincoln Wood to deliver his inaugural professorial lecture. Ngā mihi nui.
Okay. I better say something. Now, thank you very much, everyone, and I'm afraid I'm not going to have time to give full thanks to everybody who's contributed to my career and my success over the years. Simply not enough minutes and the time to do that. But what I wanted to do today is just talk a little bit about some of the work that I've done and sort of how I got to where I do get to. And the core of what I do is usually not PowerPoint slides. I can't stand them. I've got some nice ones up here and some pretty pictures and whatnot. But I spend most of my time with a whiteboard or document camera now. My favourite rooms to teach in are ones with lots and lots of whiteboards and having students actually get engaged with everything. Now, a lot of what I do work on is quite simply when we're thinking about a system and in a nice little box. And this is sort of what we might call operations management in general. And late at night, can I really spell? And we can think of operations management then as a system, and it can often be used as a transformation system. So when we think about that, we might say there's inputs, apologies for the handwriting, outputs, if all goes well, yep, there we go, cool. And we usually have a customer, we might have a few other people floating around as well, other stakeholders, who are going to be affected by what happens in the organisation. Now, when we're thinking about that, it sort of, I want to just point out that I see systems everywhere. I'm a little bit autistic, a little bit deaf, and I sort of live and breathe what I teach. And my dear wife has been incredibly frustrated at many times when I wanted to reorganise a pantry by lean principles rather than traditional classic pantry organisation. So thank you very much for your tolerance, my darling wife. And along with this, you know, so I live it in everything that I do and how I teach and how I supervise. Part of this is also last minute, leaving everything into the last minute. I believe this is the last scheduled IPL this year. On the off chance something might happen and I might not have to do it. But also importantly as well, when we think about lean, is we're often thinking about this person here, the customer, and really listening to the voice of the customer and trying to understand what it is that they value. Because ultimately that's what we want to do, is we want to create a system which is going to generate an outcome of value to the customer. Very, very simple. Some of the other sort of words you might hear me use is the idea of procurement, buying, organising, inputs. I think, as Marie pointed out, I've got research sort of, it feels like all over the show. Some of it will be more procurement, some will be in the operations and the supply chain, but there's also a fair bit here also in marketing domains as well. And again, when you're thinking about what the customer wants and how to deliver that, hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. Now, the challenge is, how do you organise that system to do what you want it to do? And that's really what I spend most of my day, from first waking moment through to falling asleep at night, thinking about is how do I get the system to efficiently or effectively do what I want it to do? Autistic, a little bit of, control issues here. And when I talked to ChatGPT said that if I was going to talk about randomness, I should really, use playing cards. Abby and Ella, do you want to come up and do a bit of helping? Audience participation, all right? She doesn't have to. Oh, okay. Can you open those for me? There's a little tab on the side there, I think. Tab on the side? Just open the tab. Oh. So, according to ChatGPT, the best way to deal with randomness is to use some playing cards, which makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? So, Ella. Oh, Abby, do you want to just put some of these cards out for me, one at a time, off the top there? So nice and random. Next card. Nice and random. Next card. Oh, you got the... Okay. Yeah, that's not going to work. Now, normally I'd have the idea of random inputs and reliable outputs, but I don't know if this is going to work today because obviously I've got things around the wrong way. But there's a very simple solution here, and this is called a black box. So, I'm going to put them in the box. Do you want to give it a bit of shake? So, no secret bottoms or anything. No secret bottoms, is there? Let's try again. Do we have any random cards this time? Ooh, that's a bit more promising. Oh, yeah. Oh, red still. Hey, okay. So we've got some random cards here. What do you think? Is that looking more random? Well, it's not all in sequence, is it? So I think we're having somewhat a little bit more success now. But ultimately, I want to get back to getting a little bit of reliability now, and that's ultimately what we want, is we want to take these random inputs, put them through a system, shake them all up a bit, and hopefully then, if all goes well, we'll get a little bit more predictability here. And we'll have some, hey, aces. Hey. Okay, so I cheated. Okay, you can keep doing that. It's all filled with jokers now, love. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you. All right, so a little bit chaotic. Where did my picture go? So when we're thinking about the cards, then it's really, how do we do that? How do we design that system so that we can actually work out what's going on inside the system, inside the black box, making it less black, and then enabling us to get better outcomes. Now, taking us through a little bit of a story there. Yes, I do love the old playing cards, there's no doubt about it. And the big question is, well, what do we do? How do we design the system? How do we operate within the system? We cannot escape variability. We cannot escape randomness. So what do we do? Well, we can use data. We can learn from data. We can understand some of these key patterns. Another big thing that I do in my work as well is think about rehearsals, thinking about practicing, thinking about learning, thinking about getting into those decisions. And then eventually trying to understand some of these trade-offs that we need to make as well, and actually work through these and try and make them transparent and manageable. So, as a kid, thank you, Mum, I obviously liked transport and wearing jandals, and you'll still hear me flip-flopping around the business school in jandals today. Yes, all in jandals there. My grandfather enjoyed watching sci-fi movies with me, got me into the love of technology, and he also used to chuckle a lot about making money in a very capitalist sense. I think at one stage I tried to charge him to use the washrooms in his house, which he found horribly amusing for some reason. This one's from Mariyama. Yes, I did do a little bit of karate, and in terms of the karate, it was wonderful for building resilience, determination and perseverance and discipline. And the other interesting sort of activity as a kid I undertook was really working in the Boy Scouts, or Scouts now I guess, with my father who was a Scout leader. And we had lots of fun there, and again it teaches you a lot about being prepared. We won the Leroy Cup, sort of a camping scouting competition up in Auckland. And I think the most valuable lesson out of that was how the older kids taught me that once you know what the output is, you can pretty much optimize what you do and how you do it in a way that's going to be, not going to say lazy, I'm not going to say cheating, I'm not going to say cutting corners, but just doing it the smartest, easiest way possible to get the desired results. Now, as a kid, I probably shouldn't be saying all these things. In primary school, I was obsessed with making money. I suppose there's no surprise I'm in a business school, right? Although we don't earn lots and lots of money, but I was obsessed with money. And one of the things I worked out was a lottery is a great system, right? It doesn't cost me anything to set up, and people would pay, and they seemed to get really excited about it. And I pretty quickly had to work out this thing called probability, starting from scratch, because I didn't have any books on statistics. And I had to work it out because if you screwed it up, you'd be losing all your money. And so really this is that first sort of hint there is understanding uncertainty and then designing the systems around it, knowing that you cannot control absolutely everything. But it goes better than that, because I used to play Dungeons and Dragons. Yes, I know, it's a bit geeky, right? Now, I think these are the actual books. Jared, do you remember if these are the... No, okay, a bit before your time. The books that we used to use, and Dungeons and Dragons is great because you can do all sorts of fun stuff. You can have a bit of enjoyment there, but a lot of it will, hinge on the roll of the dice, whether or not you live or you die. You can have the best tactic, and things just go horribly wrong at the last moment. And so it also gives you the safe space though, because you can try things, you can try strategies and approaches, and you know what, if your character dies, you just get a new one. Not the end of the world. And so it became this idea for me of rehearsing and learning from failure as you go. And every character that you built up, you'd learn from the past characters, and you could carry forward all of that information and insight and become a better decision maker. Now, in intermediate school and high school, yeah, it was back to the cards. It was back to sort of poker and things, both playing as well as running the actual poker games as well. And careful how I say it. It taught me all sorts of interesting skills. Also in high school, I engaged in the Young Enterprise scheme, so again, making money. I'm a big proponent of making money. And I learnt through high school, through all sorts of wheeling and dealing and bartering and trading and buying and selling of all sorts of products. I learned all sorts of things about, supply and demand, margins. I learnt how lucrative grey markets and black markets can be. We won't go into that too much, but I learned a lot about business there. And this gave me, though, when I'm thinking about poker, this insight here that, once we start to see what's going on, once we begin to understand these trade-offs, we can actually make better decisions overall. And I like to go fast. That's me on the luge, having lots of fun. 25 odd years ago, I graduated onto motorcycles, much to my mum and dad's dismay. And I love riding. I've sort of given it up a little bit simply with the family situation, not really wanting to have a crash and be out of action. But I can't get away from loving the motorcycles, and there's things that you can control. I mean, you can prep your bike, you can do all your safety checks, mechanical checks, you can wear all the right equipment, you can be alert, you can adapt your riding to changing weather or road conditions. There's a lot you can do, but ultimately there's just still that chance that something goes horribly, horribly wrong. And there's little Abby helping me as well, and she was much younger, fixing up the motorcycle a bit. After I did the adaptions, I gunned it, and I got this beautiful big throaty roar, went upstairs, and my wife goes, she goes, "I thought you said it was going to be a little bit louder." Whoops. But, transport is and always has been pretty close to my heart. So the first sort of couple of publications where I went through, one of these was in Transportation Research, Series B. It's a methodologically focused journal. And this was with my honours supervisor. And again, we were looking at trucks. As boring as anything. Trucks and distribution. Now this is very particular to the Auckland market, being quite an interesting constrained situation with the isthmus there, and having at the time very few motorway connections, and trying to understand what happens as congestion worsens and the impact that it has on deliveries. Now that was using a little bit of math, a little bit of simulation modelling work, and it was quite different to the other early article that I had accepted with my master's supervisor, QL. And this one was a case study, so a much more qualitative piece of work as well in the International Journal of Production and Operations and Production Management. And so there's a little bit of tension there that you can sometimes see in my work. I do some sort of qualitative work with interviews and textual data, but I also do quite a lot of more statistical work as well. QL convinced me to apply to a scholarship at the University of Auckland to do a PhD, and I thought, yeah, sure, why not? Sounds like fun. Shock and horror, actually did get an offer. Came back to do a PhD, came back, found QL in the old offices, and found him packing us up his office, and they'd had some staffing changes. Not a really auspicious time to start your PhD when your proposed supervisor's on his way out. But that was okay. I thought, I can get around that. So, I got into the PhD, working on supply chain. Went back to Jay, who supervised me for my honours project, and got through to the confirmation seminar. And, after the confirmation seminar, he goes, "Oh, Lincoln, you're a really good job." And he goes, "By the way, I'm leaving." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Oh, yeah, I'm leaving, bye." So that's okay, I've got a co-supervisor, right? Except he was going back to America. And I was, what do you do now, right? I mean, it's a PhD, it'll work out well. So that was 1 year in. So one of the lessons there that I had was simply the fact that this is your own project and you've got to drive that shit. Pardon, you've got to drive that stuff. You've got to drive it, you've got to take ownership of it, and you've got to control what you can and how you can do it. Now, over that time as well, we made some pretty good friends at the university in the close-knit. I was joking beforehand about the system not cooperating. It's not the most disastrous effort there, but we'll see how it goes. And so I made some really good close friends, and we still stay in touch, and we still, cooperate now and then as well. So friends like Christoph Breidbach, now at University of Queensland, Hendrik Karifke over at Cranfield in the UK, and Paul Woodfield up in AUT. And so when you're doing your PhD, one of the things I discovered is it's a bloody lonely journey. And one thing that you probably notice as well when you look at my publications is I do a lot of collaborative work, and a lot of that comes from the kind of the hell that I went through in the PhD, and all the chopping and the changing, the supervisors falling off the face of the earth. Working as a team, I found, has been quite good. Now, getting through to the end of the PhD, what did I learn from the PhD? Oh yeah, that's right. Necky avocados taste good. So when you're in the supermarket, you're looking for an avocado, look for one with a big, long, elongated neck. That's probably the most useful tidbit of information out of my PhD. And I think I also have a distinction of not actually publishing any journal articles out of my PhD. So it can be hard, guys and ladies, that don't give up. You can do better than I can, I promise you. At the end of the PhD, though, I submitted. I got married a week later. My wife took care of all of the organisation, so it sort of worked out well for me. I didn't, get so involved in the wedding stuff. And I could also legitimately say to my supervisor, Hal, I'm submitting on this date, and I can't leave it any later because my fiancée will kill me, which made for a very easy way of submitting at that point in time. Now, after the PhD, it was interesting in terms of the decisions and the opportunities, because you never know what's going to come up and where it's going to come up. I'd done over the years quite a lot of work consulting with a number of different companies on a project-by-project basis. One of the organisations I was working with offered me a position over in London, and I also had an offer at the same time from Curtin in Australia. Sun, beaches, London. Yeah, so anyway, so we went over to Curtin. It was fun. It's a lovely place over in Western Australia. And while over there, lots of wonderful opportunities, some fabulous colleagues as well. And logistics and supply chain was really, really big and important over there. Now, I landed up in the School of Information Systems. It just happened to be where the logistics was being taught in the university. And we had a fabulously booming program there, and particularly with the Master of Logistics, we had a lot of cool executives coming in, working with us, and at the time as well, there was also quite a lot of funding and financial support for doing some pretty cool, innovative activities and projects around the teaching and the learning in this area to try and help these companies do better. And it is a vast, vast state. So, empty, beautiful, serene, wonderful people, and I very quickly got into dealing with health and safety. Now, when we're thinking about dealing with health and safety, it's pretty. I don't know if this is a genuine, real picture. Frightfully, I think I've met some students who'd probably give that a shot in Perth. But how can we? From a university perspective, when we're thinking about operations and supply chain, when we're thinking about equipment, we're thinking about heavy transport, we're thinking about, freight and stuff like that, how can we make sure that people do things in a safe and secure way? And not something like that. So I struck up a really good friendship with my buddy Torsten Reiners. Yes, I've worked with a lot of German colleagues. And we did some early work there with the Oculus Rift virtual reality headset. And this really got me interested in this idea of gamification, making learning enjoyable, and working through a whole load of simulations. Now, not just the Oculus Rift, but also simulations in classes. And we went through quite a number of different vendors and different simulation packages as well. Now, the Oculus Rift and the project was quite fun. It was quite innovative, made quite a mark. It didn't quite get the traction we were after, but we had a heck of a lot of fun there as well, with explosives and flammable things. But it wasn't just, a pretty computer game, because we also put a lot of work and time into the andragogical background of how we would use this sort of simulation environment. And again, a lot of this would sort of draw on these ideas from Dungeons and Dragons, multiple lives, being able to repeat, being able to try again, being able to experience different decisions under different circumstances maybe, and trying to understand how to get to those good outcomes. So there's a lot of mapping and design work behind the scenes, and I got the wonderful opportunity to work with so many very talented instructional designers during that process as well. And of course, when you start to look at all the data, you can sort of get heat maps and all sorts of really interesting analytics about how people were engaging with these environments as well. So that's a sort of a container yard seen from the a bird's eye view, and you can sort of get that sense about how they were moving and navigating that environment. So, yeah, learning and teaching has always been a passion of mine, and whether it's undergraduate or postgraduate, I like to get students doing stuff. I like to have them, creating and learning through doing. Now, whether or not that's in a computer simulation environment where I want them to fail, I mean, hey, I'm not above cheating. I'm not above, playing with the system so that they get those wonderfully helpful educational opportunities from the simulation. Yes, I have had students accuse me of cheating, and yes, I have been fearful of my life and well-being when students got very enraged with the simulations in class at times, and they're very frustrated that they weren't able to get those results that they were looking for. But it's a very helpful learning experience for them as well, because they can very quickly learn that their decisions aren't always going to be good decisions. And they can very quickly then get that feedback in that simulated environment so that they can learn what to do next time and achieve better results. I also enjoy, touchy-feely physical stuff as well, so developing little catapults and trying to get levels of accuracy and working with that sort of statistical process control and cool stuff like that. Computer simulations and physically getting people doing things around the classroom environment. But of course, lots of other stuff happens as well. And I was at a random conference. It was not one that I intended to go to. It's just sort of nearby, so I thought I'd pop in and had a wonderful time at the conference. I was sitting in the audience and I was watching a junior researcher basically being skewered by a senior professor. He kept on just asking hard, tough, mean questions of this poor junior researcher. Not very nice. I sort of had a bit of a chuckle about the challenges that this poor person was having, and how vicious this professor was being. Next to me, I heard somebody else having a bit of a giggle about it as well. So we left, we got a coffee, we stayed in touch, and there was a chance encounter at a random conference, and we've gone on. I don't know how many articles we've done together and how many projects. But Wang and I have been quite close. He's hosted me and my wife several times as well over in Kuala Lumpur when we visited him. But he came from a construction background and construction management and engineering, and so working with him for about 10 or 15 years, I did quite a lot of work on global construction projects. A lot of this was focused around the design decisions to try and create wonderful living environments, understanding what that customer would want or the stakeholders would want, and then working out how to design it in. But there's also a lot of work here at the bottom, you know, where we're thinking about defect analysis, quality problems, failures, and trying to understand with data what's going on in that black box so that we can actually work out how to do it better. Came back to New Zealand, landed at AUT for 3 years. Abby was born at that time. Parental leave was awesome. My wife sent me back to work after a couple of weeks. Went back to the University of Auckland, stayed there for a year in the graduate School of Management, working again in the operations supply chain area. Saw an interesting ad to develop the BSNS 111 Business and Society paper down here in Otago, so I thought, oh, that sounds cool. Let's do that. I like trying new things. So I found a home here in Otago. Wonderful colleagues, wonderful people that I've enjoyed working with, who've made me very welcome here. Right down to wooden rocking horses, because I knew I had a little daughter, and the girls have loved that wooden rocking horse, and they love the company. They've loved being able to come in and see me and say hi to everybody as well. So it's an absolutely wonderful environment to work in. I've been very blessed. Now, in 2015, before all of that happened though, I was at AUT and I had somebody go, ha! Operations management, what a load of sort of abstract, silly nonsense that doesn't really apply to anything in the real world. You know, now that you're going to be a dad, you can't do anything that's relevant to operations management. Yeah. Don't tell me I can't do it, please. So this is the first paper I had accepted when I just arrived here at Otago, and we were looking at toys. Toy recalls, so quality failures, product failures, dangerous toys, and looking at some of the nuances there in the data about how and why and under what circumstances this could be more damaging to a company, as well as looking at some of those managerial consequences. And one of the interesting things is these decisions are usually not going to be as clear cut as we think. And often the data really depends on some of the contexts there. Ella was born in 2018, and then in 2020 Finn arrived. This is my buddy Finn down here. He is still with us, turns 5 in 2 weeks, I think. So he's kept me busy. Now, I think the second day he was born, the second day he was alive, he was shipped up with us to Starship. Lots of excitement. Photo there of the kids with me on the first night. We didn't know if he was going to make it. And it turns out, well, transpires months later, that he has some pretty funky chromosomal deletions and other things going on. It's sort of a 1 in 50,000, rather rare and uncommon occurrence. Well, that's chance. And the choice here is, you know, we deal with it, and we worked as a family, and we worked things through as a family. But I kind of feel a bit like this.
Bugger.
Bugger. I was hoping to avoid all the bad language, and I was going to let the Toyota ad do it for me. That might predate some of the people in the room. So I do want to acknowledge, you know, there's been a huge amount of support from my mum and dad, who've retired down here as well, helping us out. My brothers, my sisters, and my brother and sisters-in-law there. Penelope, my lovely wife, Murray and Carol, my in-laws, and the 2 lovely daughters that I have who help out with Finn as well. And I think it's really important to acknowledge this because, golly gosh, every day is different. But in particular, I wanted, you know, just make a really good call out here to the special lovely ladies in my life, my mum, my mother-in-law, and my lovely wife, because, yeah, I get to work most days. Some days even on time. Yeah, I can get a lot done, you know, and I can publish a lot, but ultimately I can't do any of that without a huge amount of support in the background. And so thank you very much team, and I do very much appreciate all that you do for me. I literally couldn't do it all without that sort of support. And when you're thinking about support as well, and all of the people that you learn from, I've had a huge number of wonderful colleagues at Curtin, at AUT, at Auckland as well, people that I've worked with and become really good friends with over the years. And during the PhD, I had Jay, I had QL, I had my final supervisor, Turu. And Turu was quite an inspiration to me, and he was a man who was curious about many things, and he was a statistician by background, but he was also fascinated by qualitative research as well, by doing interviews, by understanding what was happening and how it was happening, and trying to understand and unpack a lot more. And so, coming back into AUT though, I developed a new system here, and I thought, well, I can do some research by myself, but if I've got more PhD students, I might be able to magnify, duplicate, replicate. I might be able to magnify, amplify my efforts. Well, it's lots of fun. You can possibly have too many students. But again, you know, I run with quite a few students, but I also develop systems to support them, to help them, and to guide them in doing good, effective research, and hopefully also being relaxed and happy and healthy at the same time. So, 3 sort of moves here, and I said I was going to talk about data, working with uncertainty, working with randomness, and patterns are important, and understanding the data and what the data tell us are important, and I don't know, so many research projects just come up with fascinating outcomes that I didn't expect. You know, my hypotheses don't pan out, and this is wonderful, wonderful experiences. So with Jason, he was a PhD student who followed me from AUT down to Otago to finish off his qualification down here, working over at the University of Sheffield now, and we looked at, you know, what happens when a big retailer like the Warehouse says, hey look, you know, we're going green. You know, we're going to be more sustainable, and we're going to supply, you know, clothes that are made without sweatshops, and, you know, great new green packaging that's not going to pollute the oceans of the world. You know, and the question is this going to be bad for the companies that sell them products? And so we collected this massive data set as part of Jason's PhD research. I think he finished in 2018 or 2019. This was published in 2023. It can take a while. And the research that was published eventually exceeded and went far beyond the scope of his PhD project as well, involving more data collection, quite a few new analyses suggested by our wonderful, kind and thoughtful reviewers. Don't get me started on reviewer 2. And again, it was interesting because when we began to look at the nuances there, it's like, well, yes, there would be sort of costs that would be incurred by some of these suppliers, but again, we had to dig into some of the context there to really understand how and when those costs would be incurred by the suppliers, and also then what those suppliers could do to mitigate some of those challenges. Toy recalls, using a similar sort of finance approach, the event study methods. And so I use a lot of data-driven analytical approaches here using statistics, but before we get to that point, you know, I often use a lot of systematic literature reviews, and so this is with Ali, yay, PhD student, his work here, and looking at, you know, emergency departments. I've spent too much time in them, not only for Finn, I was in there myself overnight a couple of weeks ago, so plenty of fun. And when you're looking at, say, for example, an emergency department, and you're trying to understand incoming patients and what might drive that, you need to have a pretty good sense of what some of those key factors are going to be. And so a systematic literature review can take a lot of that data from other publications. We can begin to synthesize some of those key relationships, and we can learn a lot from that. But at the end of the day, you know, this isn't by itself ever going to get me to where I want to be. And so I use a range of other research methods as well. And so this will be part of a design science research approach, where we're also coming back to the people on the front line, back to the people in the system, and getting their input, getting their thoughts into this project as well, so that we can actually capture the wisdom and the understanding of the people who are in the system doing that job to help refine some of the models we come up with. Well, rehearsal, ta-da! Simulations and computers. So we've done all sorts of simulations at Curtin and at AUT, and I've sort of settled on some that I've used quite extensively over the years. Some are pretty, some are ugly, but they're all andragogically quite sound. Now, one of the cool things about using the simulations is, as I said, it's that repeated ability to get that insight, to learn, to develop their strategies and their decisions so that they can take what we talk about, what they think they understand in a lecture, and actually then begin to apply it and very quickly work out, oh crap, we really have to do this way. You know, these relationships do hold. You know, if we want to make good decisions, we do need to monitor and manage some of these issues here that we've talked about. And some of these are business simulations where students can manage to make a simulated company go bankrupt. I'd much rather they do that in my classroom than in a real company. They can manage risk, they can look at different risk management models as well. And they can, in some cases, I'll set up a system, I cheat, so I'll set them an almost impossible task, but again, getting them to learn from that and then working with them to actually gain that insight so that they can work as a group and overcome some of the difficulties they were having when we work through a simulation again. But it's not just, you know, simulations in classroom. I also use quite a lot of simulation approaches here. So this is some work with our student Mona. It's all just sort of recently been published in the Computers and Industrial Engineering journal. And simulations are quite useful when we're trying to understand that black box of decisions, because it lets us evaluate and experiment with different solutions and different ideas. We can, instead of going into a business and screwing everything up, we can screw up a computer simulation. We can speed up time in a computer simulation, so we can see what happens dynamically with time in a way that we can't in a real world environment. And so we can get that learning, we can get that feedback into our program of research much more quickly. So we're looking here particularly at policies and how do we manage the resources around the operating room in a hospital. And policies are interesting to me as well, because when we think about the stuff that gets in the way of life, very often in organisations it's not, you know, a lack of demand or government regulations that get in the way. A lot of the times what really puts a roadblock on is our own decisions, our own policies that we put in place in an organisation. Not this organisation, obviously. This organisation is wonderful. But organisations in general, you know, they put these policies in place and somehow these policies take on a life of their own, and 5 years, 10 years later, the policy is still in place and everyone blindly follows the policy. And that must work because we're still here and it's always worked in the past reasonably well. And so simulation gives us a way of tackling some of those policies and drawing out the truth there. Working in the same sort of environment there, looking particularly around how we do scheduling in the operating rooms. Making trade-offs visible. And this is really where the multi-criteria decision making comes in. If you remember again, you know, that the idea of a system and the idea of having, you know, if you've got one customer, it's fairly easy sometimes to sort of optimize around cost. But once you start getting other stakeholders involved in a system, other people who are affected by the organizational system, then all of a sudden the decision makers inside of our organization, they've got a much more tricky and challenging situation where they've got multiple criteria, multiple things they need to consider, they need to trade off, and they need to weigh up. So a lot of this work that I've been doing is also particularly in healthcare research as well, and again, it's not always about doing things efficiently. I mean, you don't want to go into a pandemic and have no PPE because somebody said, "Oh, it's going to be too expensive to hold all of that stuff." You know, and so you've got these interesting scenarios where you do need to balance lots of different needs for lots of different stakeholders there. Working with some, again in construction from China, looking at environmental, social and governance mechanisms here, and really trying to understand what influences this, and diving more into machine learning, which is where I've been going a bit more in recent years. And I think also when we think about a decision maker here, it's also important to realise that most organisations have some sort of recipe. They've got some sort of way of mixing things up to get the outcome. But it's also important to realise that not all organisations have a single recipe. Most organisations have multiple recipes. And many organisations also have a recipe that they know is going to lead to abject total failure. And a configurational approach helps us to understand which combinations will actually get the results that we're looking for. Now, the other interesting thing there, and again, thank you reviewers, is the reviewers said, "Hey, look, I don't quite understand all this research that you're doing. Can you sort of explain it?" And so we came up with a lovely sort of picture, and I rip off my pictures and my charts and my diagrams, some articles, and I bring them into the classroom in many cases as well, trying to help my students to understand so that they can be as smart as the reviewers of our research articles as well at the end of the day. Surrogate was a chap that I worked with, and he was an author who would submit a couple of articles to a journal that I was an editor at, we got to talking about professional development, and so I gave him some advice on publishing and research, and eventually we went on and authored quite a few articles together. And so this was a sort of a survey-based approach, trying to understand how we can optimise supply chain systems for better sustainable outcomes. Lovely, lots of citations, you know, very sort of boring academic sort of measure of impact there. But it went well, and it's been well cited and well read and well used. So when I think about the future research and work that I'm doing, as Marie said, I'm working much more now in the healthcare area. It's a pain in the backside for multiple reasons. Ethics is one of them. But it's also an opportunity for us to make some pretty big impacts in what we do and how we do it, how to design these systems in a way that's going to help a variety of stakeholders, you know, not just patients and not just people who fund the healthcare system. Now working in this space as well, I'm moving more and more into analytics and into the artificial intelligence and big data, and using approaches like this as well to really get into the black box and actually making more use of some of that very cool data that there is out there. But ultimately, a lot of the work that I've done has been influenced by the number of people that I've worked with, and as I said, there's just been simply too many people to thank in one day. But absolutely, the work that I'm doing now is very much part of or comes from a lot of the training that I did at the University of Auckland, as well as all of the friendships and collaborations that I've had over the years. And after doing a lonely PhD, I very, very much appreciate the collaborative research now. So thank you very much, everybody, and hopefully there's a couple of interesting stories in there for you.
Okay, thank you. Of course it's not on because otherwise you would have heard it all throughout it. Okay, thank you for being here, particularly for Lincoln's family and all his friends online as well. This is a really special event and I'm so pleased that you're either here to watch it with us or online. So on behalf of the University, the Business School and the Department of Management, I would like to extend our warmest thanks to Professor Wood for his thoughtful and inspiring inaugural professorial lecture. Professor Wood, your work has illuminated how management and decision science can help us navigate the uncertainties of our world. And you've shown us through your own stories and your own history of how you've got here today that while the world might be noisy and unpredictable, there are practical ways to turn messy signals into dependable action. Your insights on learning from data, rehearsing decisions and making trade-offs visible are not only timely, particularly I thought in terms of the recall of the toys, I thought was very timely at the moment, but essential for anyone striving to make better decisions, whether in public services, complex supply chains or our everyday professional lives. Beyond tonight's lecture, Professor Wood, your contributions to research, teaching and leadership have enriched our department and the wider academic community. Your dedication to innovative education, your collaborative spirit and your pursuit of excellence set a standard for us all. Lincoln, thank you for sharing your story, your scholarship, your reflections on some of your earlier life, which I found quite illuminating, with us tonight. I'm sure your family as well knows all about those. We look forward to seeing where your research journey takes you next and to continuing that journey alongside you. Here is a gift of recognition from the university for you tonight. And there's also a gift here of recognition from your colleagues in the Department of Management. Congratulations, and ngā mihi nui. This concludes our formal events tonight, and I'd now like to invite you all to come to continue to celebrate Lincoln's promotion to Professor with us all at the Staff Club. Ngā mihi nui.